Well, welcome everyone. Welcome to Virtual Speakeasy. I am Bella Beth Gordon. I'm a grateful and a joyful member of Speakeasy. I just want to say this time of year, there's many different traditions that are being celebrated. Today, of course, is Christmas Day. And this is such a day of celebration for so many around the world. And there are other traditions that are also celebrated. And we're going to have 3 stories here today that will tell their own version of the light that lives even at this darkest time of year. And so we have our very own Maureen Muldoon, who is she's so brilliant at weaving us all together in this tapestry that life is, and bringing together different stories and weaving them together is definitely in her wheelhouse. She's an expert at it. And she's just amazing at just creativity in general. It flows from her prolifically, but you all know this about her. So with nothing left to say, I give you our very own Maureen Muldoon, who will share with us the story of Christmas.
Thank you, Bella. And you got it. Bella is an amazing practitioner in our community and a powerhouse leader who is just a major tentpole in our community, if you probably know that already. And Will Schaub is a great, an award-winning filmmaker and storyteller. So to rope him in to have us regale in his reading of a story is super fun too. So we have a fun tapestry today. And I am going to start it off with the story of the Nativity and bring it to you through the lens of Angeles Arrien's work, The Fourfold Way, because in that work of the visionary and the healer and the warrior and the teacher, she helps us to find the Christ within each of us. And so knowing that today is the birth of Christ, but that it's no longer viewed as in one son, but in all sons. So if you're not familiar with Angeles Arrien's work called The Fourfold Way, she has these 4 archetypes, and they are the visionary, which tells the truth without shame, and the healer who pays attention to what has heart and meaning, and the warrior who shows up to be present, and the teacher who shares without attachment to outcome. And we can look at this story of the Nativity through this lens, and the Blessed Mother really demonstrates for us the visionary in this story, because she's willing to share the truth without shame. And this teenager who is supposedly a virgin is going to give birth to Christ. And she doesn't waver for really even a second before sharing the news all over the place. And so the question as we look at this story is, where do I tell the truth without shame? Where am I telling my truth without shame? Or conversely, where am I hiding my truth without shame? The visionary who is one who brings her voice to the visions that she receives, and then she shares it out into the world without editing the story, without sugarcoating it, without watering it down, without hiding or modifying it in any way, shape, or form. And she unapologetically, allows the truth to unfold through her. And even if the vision is unpopular. So sometimes when we have visions that feel unknown or unpopular, or we're not something familiar to us or familiar to how other people see us, we sort of hedge around, like, maybe I want to do this, or I was kind of thinking of that. So there might be this light, this brilliance within you that has been a bit silenced or suffocated. And the Blessed Mother shows us how to go without shame or blame. And she goes to Joseph and she says, I'm giving birth to this child of God. The visionary, when you tap into this energy, has the ability to speak the truth so that others don't even question. When you have visionary energy, they're working with a higher hand. They're not working with the form. and they're open to this bigger truth. And this idea of being able to birth something that has yet been known. And Mary receives this vision and she says, okay, this is going to happen. And again, it might not make sense to the world, but the visionary has no time to worry about that, because this vision is so big, it's just almost birthing through her. So when it comes to your visionary, your inner visionary, it's the place where either people get with you or they get out of your way. And so we want to think about, where am I allowing my visions to be hot and holy? And she brings this vision to Joseph, and Joseph portrays the warrior, the one who shows up to what has heart. And so Joseph represents that in this story with Mary. And when she comes to him with the good news, the warrior is not about speaking the vision. The warrior is about holding the space for the vision. And he demonstrates that. I like to say, like in this story, you remember what Joseph said to Mary. Remember that beautiful monologue, that the words that he spoke, the poetic mad ramble that he went on when she told him she was giving birth to the Christ child. And of course, nobody remembers it because it was never recorded. Because he speaks through his action, and the warrior speaks through his action, and he speaks through his action, and the words that are spoken through his actions speak volume of who he is. When you're connected with this warrior energy within you, it's the place where you don't have to make promises or soliloquies or demands or accusations. It's the place that you would show up in the dark in the middle of the night with nobody watching. You would show up to this place, this space, this calling without question or condition. So where are you feeling that calling and allowing yourself to fully show up to that calling? Where are you in your warrior? And where are the warriors that are showing up for you? If the visionary is about the future, the warrior is about the present. And when challenges present themselves, they don't faint, they don't fight, they don't fear. They really hold an unwavering presence. And this is who Joseph is in this story. He loves Mary. He holds space for her to deliver this vision. And we might wrongly assume that the warrior or Joseph can be sort of milquetoast in this story, but really the truth is that the warrior's energy rests on great passion. They choose to be here. They choose to hold this space. They don't just hold it out of a sense of resentment or a sense of duty, but rather a sense of passion. Like, this is the place that they wouldn't miss for the world. And that's how Joseph shows up. And then next comes the healer. And the healer energy or archetype shows up to pay attention to what has heart and meaning. So these are sort of the symbol readers. And the symbol reader within you and in the story are the kings and the shepherds and the drummer boy. All of these archetypes show up and pay attention to signs and symbols and synchronicities and what has heart and meaning for them. And that's how they end up at the manger. And that's why they end up at the manger. They end up at the manger because they're following the sign, the symbol, the star. And they show up in the manger because they are activating that warrior energy too. And they're showing up to what has heart and meaning. And the invitation to see this holy light draws them in, and this is the calling of their heart. The healer also is about sharing gifts. So you see in all of these archetypes that they are sharing their gifts. They're sharing their gifts of time. They're sharing their gifts of treasure. They're sharing their gifts of talent. So where the warrior just holds the present and his gift is more than enough, these healers also deliver extra gifts. So in our community, we have many healers, those who come to share their gifts, and the kings among us that write the checks, and the shepherds among us that care for each other and that kind of corral people and kind of soften or support people on their journey. These are the healers. There are the drummer boys, the singers, the poets who share their talents. The healers take what's good and then they somehow miraculously make it even better. Like, it wasn't just that this baby was born in this manger and this beautiful light was coming into the world, but now you were going to have the kings throw a party to that parade. You're going to have the shepherds come. You're going to have the drummer boy, add this heartbeat to it. And so the healers make what is even better. And so where are you adding your additional gifts. Where do you share your gifts? The gifts that flow from your very happy heart. The healers are the magic makers. They're the singers, they're the dancers, they're the storytellers. They're the ones that feel comfortable even in the stillness. And then finally, the last archetype is the teacher. The teacher who shares without attachment to outcome, which is a very powerful elixir to bring to the story. And it's where you teach something. But in your teaching, it feels the same as if you're giving it away, like you're not expecting anything back. And this is how Jesus comes. He comes and teaches us, love your brother as yourself. Don't be mean to the harlot, don't be, to take care of the leper. He teaches us these things. And then even when we don't abide by the teaching, he still loves us unconditionally. And that is this magnificent elixir of the teacher, because they don't get hung up or strung out on how you're going to or not going to use the teaching. As an example, I could teach you to count. But if you use that counting to count your enemies as opposed to your blessing, I can't retract that teaching from you and say, you don't get to use counting anymore because you don't know how to use counting in a beneficial way. So the teacher is the one that really lets go. And one of the slogans for teacher might be like, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink. Like, you can bring people to a teaching, but you can't dictate on how they use it. You can teach, but you can't control. So where are we allowing ourselves to be unconditional with other people, to allow other people to come to their truth in the way that they want to come to it without orchestrating or controlling how it must look? And Jesus exemplifies this role of teacher in the fourfold way. And he comes with this wisdom, this clarity, this objectivity, this discernment, and this detachment. He doesn't even take credit for his teachings. He says, it's God within me that does the work. So where are you living in your gospel, extending your love and not keeping score? And where are you not taking another's inventory, but just allowing yourself to rise and shine in your own brilliance? Again, the questions are: the visionary, where do we tell the truth without shame? The warrior, where do we show up and really be present? The healer, where do we pay attention to what has heart and meaning? And the teacher, where do we share without attachment to outcome? Because we are all of the archetypes in this story. You are the Blessed Mother who dares to tell the truth without shame. You are Jesus, Joseph, who shows up to be present. You are the shepherd and the king and the drummer boy, paying attention to what has heart and meaning. And you are the Christ who teaches love without conditions. And these energies will help to bring us closer to that holy ground this holiday season. And be able to celebrate, as Bella said, as we cross into the new year and begin to shed these darker hours, it is our present time to shine and to use these skills to celebrate all kinds, all facets of our being. When we move into the new year, the theme for the new year is the brilliance of kindness. And the question is, what kind do we want to be? Noting that our last name is humankind. And so each month we're going to be moving through another nod to the brilliance of kindness. And so I'm looking forward to this beautiful year ahead of us. And we begin here. What kind do you want to be as you stand around the nativity of the birth of Christ within yourself? And with that, I will pass it to Will Schaub.
I know we're going to have time to discuss this later, but that brought up a lot of questions for me, Maureen. When you're talking about Joseph being the warrior, I mean, there's a lot of questions I have there. First of all, he's got a virgin bride. What is that even about? That's already weird. And then she's carrying the Son of God. I feel like I would have some questions if I were Joseph. But, no.
Well, very good. So we have time for questions, but let's hear your story.
Moving on. Okay, this is actually, truth be told, this is not my story. Maureen and I'm Will Schaub, by the way, and I'm Maureen's husband. And there are times that we are a creative team, but this story is really not mine. It's hers. And so I can't take really any credit for it. She asked if I would share it today, and I'm happy to help out. But this is the soul creation of Maureen Muldoon, and it is called The Candlestick Maker. You've heard of the butcher, you know the baker, but do you remember the candlestick maker? The candlestick maker, well, she's all about light, and she laughs and she sings and she makes all things right. She lives down the lane at the edge of the town. Her door's always open, her guard's always down. If you want to get lit in the holiest way, you'll need to go see her. She lives where you pray. Though your road may be long and your journey seem dark, she can always be trusted to send out a spark. From the babe in the manger to the 8 days of oil, to the old man in red and the elves who all toil. In the darkest of nights, when all hope seems to die, she will send you a light. She will answer your cry. For she loves all her candles, her happy creations. She sends to the world its illumination. These candles she fashions with wisdom and rhyme, no one like the other, each lasts a lifetime. The wax is pure love that she molds into place in the care of her hands, all created in grace. And to each stick of wax she'll whisper a prayer. You're the light of the world, be as bold as you dare. Then she strikes up a match and she lights up each wick, and a purpose comes clear to each small candlestick. Then the children all gather, the angels will sing, the sad are all lifted, the church bells will ring. The warmth of each flame brings her so much delight as they shine like the sun and make all the world bright. So on nights such as this one, at the end of December, as we all join together and try to remember, yes, on nights much like this, we can try if we dare. Can you hear her faint whisper and recall her sweet prayer? To live in your truth, to be bold and divine, for the purpose of life is to let your light shine. And with that, I pass to our own Bella Gordon.
Thank you. Uh, I I can't wait to get to the conversation. I love both of these stories. Um, the interpretation of the nativity and that beautiful candle maker story. I've heard it before, but I heard it even more today. And I'm going to share with you a story from the Jewish tradition of Hanukkah. And I'm going to just read to you a simple children's story about the holiday and another way in which, at this time of year, we're acknowledging the light that's always here. So, Hanukkah, the holiday of lights, usually comes in December. It's 8 days long, and every evening is a celebration. Jewish families take out a special candle holder called a menorah. Hanukkah menorahs can be short or tall, fat or thin, plain or fancy, but everyone has places for 8 candles plus 1 helper candle for lighting the others. And on the first night of Hanukkah, families say special prayers and they light 1 candle. And on the second night, 2 candles are lit. And by the 8th night, all of the candles are burning. And as the candles flicker and glow, songs are sung, and many families eat potato pancakes with applesauce or donuts, and they exchange gifts, and children play a game with a special spinning top called a dreidel. What is the story of Hanukkah? The story of the first Hanukkah was thousands of years ago. And the Jews at that time had a beautiful temple in Israel. And people went there to pray. And inside that temple was a light, an eternal flame that was always burning. But one day, an Assyrian king led by his army came into Israel, and he said that the Jews could no longer follow their religion. And his soldiers marched into the temple, and they put out that special lamp that always burned there for the eternal flame. Led by the brave Judah Maccabee, a small group of Jewish farmers fought back. They had only sticks and stones for weapons, and still they chased the king and his army away. Then the Maccabees led all the Jews back to their temple. The temple was dirty and overgrown with weeds, and everyone came to clean it and make it beautiful again. And then they went to find oil to light that eternal flame that was supposed to always be burning, to remind them always of the presence of God and the infinite light that is always here. But they could only find enough oil for a single day, and it takes 8 days to make more oil. And so they lit the lamp anyway, and miraculously, it burned for 8 days until enough new oil was made. And so on Hanukkah, this is the miracle that is celebrated again. People remember Judah Maccabee and his men and how they fought not just for land, for riches, but for what they believed in, for their religious freedom, for their right to remember God is always present, right where they are. And so I just invite you to take a moment to notice, do you remember that light that dwells within you eternally? That helps you remember God's presence all the time. And do you feel the freedom to express your relationship with God through whatever religion that you enjoy or in your own way? Do you feel that sense of freedom? This is a holiday that helps you remember that that is here for you. And so we're going to get into a conversation about all of these stories. And before we do that, I am going to pass it back to Will for our giving statement, and then we'll invite you all into the conversation. And now it's time for the truly unique experience of SpeakEasy Sunday service, our community conversation. And this is where we invite you to speak easily, find your voice and your truth, share your thoughts, inspirations, awareness, and your questions in community. So when you feel called to share a question, please go ahead, raise your hand. And if you could raise your virtual hand, that would help us even more, which is located in the reactions tab at the bottom of the screen. Please note to leave your video on so that we can highlight you when it's time to share. So first of all, I'll just get us started by saying I loved bringing the fourfold way in the interpretation through the visionary, the warrior, the teacher, and the healer to this whole nativity experience on Christmas. And Will, when you shared the story of the candlestick maker, the way you read it, I just felt the story so powerfully. It was beautiful. Thank you. And I see your hand up, so go ahead.
Well, actually, what you shared about the Jewish faith, it reminded me of a column that I just happened to be reading this morning in today's Chicago Tribune about a Muslim family that says we celebrate Christmas. And he said it's not that weird. A lot of Muslims do. And not that we need to expand even more in our pretty inclusive service this morning, but they said, yeah, we honor Muhammad as the prophet, but as an extenuation and a completion of the prophets Moses and Jesus, and is a tentpoles of their faith. And so he was saying that there's no conflict there, that it's they actually study Jesus and revere him as a prophet of God as well. So it's just kind of another inclusive aspect of Christmas that I thought was, I don't know, it was lifted my spirit this morning, so I thought I'd pass it on.
Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of overlap with all of these traditions. And I think that's the whole point, is that, we're all gathered here and we could separate ourselves into individual, you know, spaces and say we're different. And we could also just come together and say, let's see the common ground between us and enjoy that connection.
Yeah, and I love the story of the Maccabees because I mean, I was familiar with the story about the oil, but I don't think I was really clear about the purpose. And the purpose was to celebrate their God, their relationship with God. And so it just felt like when you were reading that story that I was like, I'm a Maccabee. And we're like, I want to keep the lights lit and I want to clean out the temple. I want to make sure everybody has the ability to celebrate the way they need to celebrate. And there's just like enough space for all of us to be unique in our celebration of our own divinity. It's just beautiful.
Yes. Yeah, that is it. It's like everybody, no one can really dictate to you what actually fills your heart with that love, what actually allows you to experience the infinite.
Yeah. Sorry?
People try to do that.
Well, and people try because I have dimmed my light. Each of us are responsible for that light, just like the Maccabees were responsible for that light in the temple. But it's symbolic of the internal light. And I could say this church tried to do this or that guy tried to do that, but they succeed or fail to the degree with which I hold my internal knowing. No one can trample that light. There's a light within me that cannot fail. I mean, this is, true for all of us, but it is interesting to take 100% responsibility for that light, because that light and our responsibility to it is what's going to dictate the fulfillment of that, what we call, or sometimes here is the second coming, but it's just Christ birthing through each of us. Anyway, mad ramble.
That's what this is for. We want to hear from all of you too. How did those stories land? What touched you? I see that Lynn put in the chat, there's an entire chapter in the Quran about the Blessed Mother Mary.
Yes. And is there a holiday story that ties in for you around these stories of light? I wonder. Because it is interesting to be able to see these stories next to each other and go, oh, okay, that's where I see, and that's what I see, and that's what I see. And I think that's just great.
Yeah. And just, if there's something you just want to share about your own experience of this time of year, Joni, I see your hand up. Go ahead.
Thanks. I just wanted to add, kind of reminded, the whole story with the Maccabees, that no matter what the form is, as Maureen suggested, I get to choose to hold my light. And then what Will was alluding to with Joseph, I'm sure the ego spoke first and loudest when he started to think of all the complications around his fiancée being pregnant. But he then felt the light that she was trying to tell him that this was all about. And when ultimately, out of strength, he accepted that his part was to help care for the light, just like the 8 days with the menorah.
Yeah, but what I would say, Joni, is that there have been times where the world sort of invited you into a version of yourself where you didn't doubt it, where you were like, oh, hell yes, I'm walking through that door. It doesn't make any sense. I'm probably not qualified. It's a little awkward, but there's nothing that will prevent me from walking through that door. So although we might want to speculate that he had trepidations, which he could have, I think even more exciting is like how you're actually drawn to play your part like a magnet to metal. Like it would be because otherwise we might think to ourselves that this is drudgery and requiring of sacrifice. And that's not the story. Do you know what I'm saying? I'm not saying that we're not going to meet with our own, borderline bullies of those things. If he has trepidation, it's an internal trepidation. And we all do have that, don't we?
Right. And then when taking it to the Holy Spirit, he then got the clearer message that, you know, we all can have the clear message in our first doubts. You know, that's all I was saying.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Thanks, Joni. Amber Sky.
Hi, Merry Christmas. Um, so I am in my new place. I'm so excited. Like, I don't know, just listening to everything this morning. You guys know I'm like kind of emotional, but this is like, I don't know, just sitting here and listening to everybody. Like, this is really surreal for me to be in my own place. And I've got this beautiful like view. I probably can't see it, but there's just all trees out there, and I'm just watching the birds and the squirrels. And it's just so much better to be on my own and be able to have my own place at this time of year. So this is a very, very difficult time of year for me. So like 15 years ago, my brother had a car accident on December 22nd. And it left him with traumatic brain injury that he battled for 12 years before he finally passed away. So this is like, especially when it snows and there's ice, which we have right now. I mean, I'm always thinking about that, and it's just part of my Christmas now. And it doesn't help the fact that, you know, he's passed on, and that I don't have a relationship with my family for my own mental health. So I have celebrated. I do have people that I've celebrated with all week, and I have a couple of girls I consider like kids that are staying with me this weekend. So, and I'm going to see some friends today. So, I mean, I guess my point is that there's, you know, maybe there's other people that can relate to this, that, you know, while there might be people, you know, you don't expect people to be grieving this time of year, but there's always going to be grief for me this time of year that I'm going to work through. But there's this other beautiful side of it, and this way that I've grown out of it, and hopefully somebody else can relate to that, and that balance, that, you know, we can still find the joy even when we're when we're still grieving over things that, you know, maybe happened a really, really long time ago that we're still processing, and that there's still beauty and joy in all of that. And so, yeah, there can, even though, you know, I know, Maureen, you said, you know, you're talking about suffering, but for me, it's like, there was a lot of suffering, but there's a lot of beauty and joy, because I wouldn't be the person I am without all of that sacrifice. So just really happy to be here today. Thanks, guys.
Yeah.
Thank
Thanks.
you so much, Amber. And what a beautiful demonstration of bringing that light into the darkness.
Yeah, and you're absolutely 100% right. This is such a tender time of year. You know, there's a lot of grieving that goes on, and the days are dark, you know, and we all have the tendency to compare our lives against the Facebook picket fences, and it's terrible. You know what I mean? It's like in our own home, you know, we've got just you know, we've got our own experiences to move through, and it's not just rainbows and butterflies, and that's okay.
Good morning, everyone. Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah. And I just wanted to say that, you know, this is the message I needed to hear today from all three of you. And and I think that Will telling Maureen's story is Will's story. It's your story. It's my story, you know. And I've been I don't want to say struggling. I've just been contemplating, like, what is mine? Where do what's my purpose? What, you know, just the whole questioning of everything that I think is part of our growth spiritually and professionally and everything else, and humanly. And I just, this message today just was so crystal clear that it doesn't matter, you know, where I show up, when I show up, just that I bring my light.
I love that story, The Candlestick Maker. You know, the rhythm and the poetry and all of it. I could listen to that all day long.
I wanted to create a Christmas story that was inclusive, you know, and we're all included in the light, you know. And I also, you know, always favor a story with a female deity. And I remember the butcher, the baker, and I was like, yeah, what was up with the candlestick maker? You don't, you know, Also in that story that, you know, you think about the butcher, the baker, the candlestick maker, I always saw them depicted as men. And so seeing the candlestick maker as a woman, and then thinking about God, you know, placing this light within each of us, you know, breaking down these thick concepts so that even children could digest them.
That actually reminded me a little bit of you know, Maureen talking about Joseph and his role in the whole story. Because I have a wife with a son who has another father, and I've always been I guess kind of like that Joseph role, just like this guy that's there, but it's a weird role to play, and I think a lot of dads, you know, end up in that position. But I got a little bit of a Christmas miracle yesterday. My my son Owen sent me a letter just saying, "Hey, you're my dad too. I love you." And it was like 30 years in the making, but it was lovely. And so life is interesting, you know. It's we all have roles to play, and they're not always easily defined, and we have different archetypes or whatever they are. But I think sometimes we just show up and do what's ours to do in good faith. And I suppose that's maybe how Joseph saw it. You know, it's like, well, I'm here to be this guy and play this role and support everyone else. And
Yeah.
So that was
In
a
the
beautiful
note,
little gift for me.
yeah, and thank you for sharing that, Will. It's so generous for you to share that. And in the note, Owen wrote, you know, when I have ever had to fill out emergency contacts, I put you down, you know, because you're the person that's always there, who I feel, you know, safe with. And he said, like, thank you for, you know, helping my mom and being a good husband. It just always makes me feel safe that you are such a good husband. I know. And I love that, you know, it's 30 years in the making, because I know Will has been the Josephs from day one with Owen, just like wanting to be there and be a great dad and never wanting to get it wrong, and trying, you know, coaching soccer and making lunches. I always say he's a better mom than I am in regards to our kids. And I don't think Joseph gets too much of the glory on Christmas, you know. He really is sort of that, you know, silent bystander. And so celebrate the Josephs in your life. Yeah, I could tell a story. One time, you know, Owen came up to Will and had these two action figures, almost in Will's mind, maybe representing his two dads. And he's like, you know, Batman and Fire and Aquaman. And he was like, which one do you like the best, Will? And Will was like, this was a test. I had to get it right. It took him a while. And he was like, Batman. And Owen was like, okay. And he walked away. And Will said, wait, what? Wait, which one do you like the best? And he goes, oh, I like them both the same. And it's like, you know, that is just this, you know, this Christmas, Owen really got to say to Will, I like you just the same as any other father that I've ever had. And these are the gifts that you brought into my life. And, you know, like, I wonder if there's places that we're remiss on saying thank you to those Josephs who have held space for us. And
I just have to say that brought a tear to my eye as you were sharing that, Will. And Maureen, when you were sharing that Owen acknowledged what a great husband Will is for you, and as your son, like, to see your mother, like, having such a loving partner, like that's such a gift. I don't know, that brought tears to my eyes. So thank you. I think we're all being very well fed by this beautiful share. Thank you for sharing it, Will. It was very vulnerable, and also I think it touched many of our hearts this morning. So I see Heidi, you've got your hand up.
We have Betty. We have Betty.
Yeah.
who's up.
We have Heidi.
Okay, go Betty.
Oh, Betty.
Oh, thank you. Thanks. And it's sort of like you have thoughts, and when you think deeply about them, the energy of those thoughts to travel. And so I was about to be disappointed because I had already decided I was going to thank Will. Not that I know or knew before you just articulated the relationship, is that to thank Will for identifying also the Joseph in me, because I certainly would have, if I'm resting on the meaning of virgin as one meaning, yeah, no sexual intercourse, that's one thing. I am that Joseph who doubts. But then the Joseph who loves, who says, there's a light in this woman, in this new birth, the possibility of a new light, new birth at this time. I want to see how long this light is going to last. Joseph also is a virgin in this situation because he's naive and inexperienced in understanding the spiritual aspect of this and seeing this as a light that we haven't experienced before. So it's not only Mary that's a virgin, but that interest and what holds you is how long is this light going to last, and what am I to do to make sure that this light goes on? And there's a sense of a new light within both Mary and Joseph. So those are the thoughts I had when Will was talking. But as I said, as thoughts go, they are energy, and everybody ends up speaking to the same thing. So thank you. Thanks to Will. Thanks to Joseph.
And you know, Betty, even though we're all saying sometimes the same thing, it's like you would be surprised how you can't hear it enough. You know what I mean? Like, so it's always nice to repeat it.
Thanks to also Maureen for the archetypes of encouraging us to also look within ourselves, not just by separating ourselves from the names and the titles or the concepts, but also taking in those concepts, or those names rather, as representative of things within us as well. So thank you.
You're welcome. Good to see you. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas to everybody.
You know, it's SpeakEasy's energy and legacy. You know, it was a conversation that has its own imprint and its own fingerprint. And you, Bella, me, Regina, Will, and you know, Mari, Joni, everyone who's here is a midwife to that. And what comes to mind is that Rumi quote that I think of SpeakEasy when I think of this quote that says, "Come, come, whoever you are, wanderers, worshipers, lovers of leaving, it doesn't matter. Ours is not a caravan of despair. Come, even if you have broken your vow 1,000 times. Come yet again, come, come." And that feels like the energy around the nativity, you know, it's like, don't let anything prevent you. That's the energy around the Maccabees. Don't let anyone prevent you or anything prevent you, not especially not yourself, from experiencing your holy divinity. That's Christmas. That's Hanukkah. That's being well lit. That's what we're here. That's what we're here for. And to be and to be good caretakers for not only our own flame, but everyone else's flame. You know, I love that in your story, there was a helper candle. And in the Course of Miracles, we're here only to be truly helpful. And like the helper candle lights the other candles. That's beautiful.
Yeah. It's the helper candle has a name. It's called the Shamash.
Shamash. I'm gonna name my next kid Shamash.
Your little helper candle.
That'll be a miracle birth for sure.
No more kids. No more kids.
Come on, Joseph, let's go to Bethlehem. Shamash. What does Shamash mean?
Helper candle? I don't know. But
Thank you for shedding light on this story. That's so beautiful.
my pleasure. It's actually a lovely story, and it's applicable for anyone. You know, you don't have to be Jewish to appreciate the eternal flame that lives within all of us, to recognize the presence of the infinite all of the time, and to honor it in a way that aligns with your heart and soul, and the freedom to have the freedom to do that. So, yeah, I kind of feel like when you really understand the spiritual essence of any holiday, they're all for all of us. We're just taking this time today to remember this light that Mary carried, this Christ consciousness, this light that the candlestick maker helps us remember, the light that the Hanukkah celebration helps us remember, and that we're all here together in this light today. So anything else you want to add, Maureen, before we pass it on to Clive?
Well, Deb Lang put in the paragraph of Course in Miracles in regards to this Christmas, give the Holy Spirit everything that would hurt you. And I was just wondering if she wanted to read that before we went into the song.
Sure.
Or,
Okay.
or maybe you
So
could
it's
read.
from the text.
It's in the chat.
Yeah, it's from the text, chapter 15, it looks like.
Sure, I'll read it.
Okay,
Yeah.
go ahead.
Okay, go ahead, Deb.
This Christmas, give the Holy Spirit everything that would hurt you. Let yourself be healed completely, that you may join with him in healing, and let us celebrate our release together by releasing everyone with us. Leave nothing behind, for release is total, and when you have accepted it with me, you will give it with me. All pain and sacrifice and littleness will disappear in our relationship, which is as innocent as our relationship with our Father and as powerful. Pain will be brought to us and disappear in our presence, and without pain, there can be no sacrifice, and without sacrifice, their love must be.
Beautiful. Thank you, Deb.
Thank
And with
you.
that, I pass to you, Clive, to close us out.
Okay. Thank you for that. Very enjoyable speakeasy. I'd like to do a song now called Winter, because I think winter's a very important time. We spend we've talked a lot about what happens in this time, but this time itself is a time when it's like time of stillness and darkness, which in that darkness sort of ramps up, turns up the volume of the light. You know, we see the light more brightly in the darkness, and in the stillness, it gives it time to stop and tell all these stories, and to think, and to be, you know, and to sort of process what we've learned during the year. And I think winter in itself is something which just sort of happens. You know, we don't kind of have any part in it. It just comes about, and it's a great time. I always like it. I always kind of think, oh God, it's going to get cold. I'm a bit of a sun lover, but then when it comes, I think, yeah, needed this. This is a real time to kind of to stop and breathe and be. And this is a song I wrote a few years back. And it's a celebration of that and all the things which kind of it conjures up for me. Bit of a kind of medieval thing. It's frost on the willow, ice on the pond, snow on the hilltops, as each blade unfurls, frozen and painted as white as the sky. Yes, winter has come in the blink